A crowded lecture hall at Harvard. A world-renowned professor. An equation so complex, he called it impossible. But then out of nowhere a 9-year-old boy raised his hand. At first, the room laughed. Until silence fell. What happened next shocked the brightest minds in America and delivered a lesson Harvard would never forget. This is the story of how a child solved the impossible. Harvard University, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Inside one of the grand lecture halls, a distinguished physics professor stood before a chalkboard filled with complex equations. The problem he wrote down was known as impossible, an unsolved challenge in theoretical physics that even top graduate students struggled with. The professor turned to the Kungdu audience of students and scholars and said confidently, "Ladies and gentlemen, this equation has no solution. It's a demonstration of limits, something that shows us where human knowledge ends." Laughter and murmurs filled the hall. To everyone, it was just another intellectual exercise. But in the very back row sat someone who didn't belong, a 9-year-old boy. Small, quiet, eyes wide with curiosity. His name was Ethan Miller, a prodigy from Boston. His parents, both teachers, had brought him to Harvard just to watch, hoping the atmosphere would inspire him. The boy's feet dangled from the chair, not even touching the floor. While the older students scribbled notes, Ethan stared at the chalkboard with total focus. He whispered to himself, "But it does have a solution." He just didn't see it. No one heard him. No one noticed the child in the oversized hoodie, except his mother, who gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just watch and learn. Ethan, don't interrupt." But Ethan's mind was already racing when the professor asked, "Does anyone care to try? Just to prove me right?" The hall stayed silent. Dozens of students avoided eye contact. Then a small hand went up, slowly, hesitantly. The professor squinted. "Yes, you in the back? Young man, this isn't elementary school. This is advanced quantum mechanics." Ethan stood up anyway. His voice was nervous, but steady. "Sir, with respect, I think I can solve it." Laughter erupted in the room. A few students even clapped sarcastically. "A kid solving Harvard physics? This will be good." Someone whispered "Dot," but the professor, more amused than offended, gestured to the board. "All right then, show us, young genius. Let's see what you've got." Ethan walked to the front, dragging a stool so he could reach the massive chalkboard. The room grew quiet. The professor folded his arms, waiting for the boy to stumble. Instead, Ethan began writing. His small hands moved quickly, filling the board with symbols and numbers. His logic was sharp, his approach unconventional. Where graduate students saw walls, Ethan saw doors. He paused only to think, then kept going, connecting concepts from classical mechanics to string theory, weaving them together in a way no one in the room had considered. Minutes passed. The laughter stopped. The silence grew heavy. Finally, Ethan set down the chalk, his cheeks flushed. "That's the solution," he said softly. The hall froze. The professor leaned forward, scanning the board. His eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. For once, the man who knew everything had nothing to say. The professor stepped closer, tracing the boy's work line by line. He turned back to the students and whispered, This is correct." Gasps erupted across the hall. Students stood on their feet, whispering in disbelief. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. A 9-year-old had just done what some of the brightest minds had dismissed as impossible. The professor turned to Ethan. His voice cracked with something between pride and humility. "Young man, you've not only solved it, you've shown us what we were too rigid to see. Sometimes genius doesn't come from experience. It comes from curiosity." Ethan's parents hugged each other, tears in their eyes. Their son had just stunned Harvard. News spread quickly. 9-year-old Prodigy solves Harvard physics problem, made headlines across the United States. Scientists debated, professors argued. But one truth stood unshakable. A child's mind had shattered the boundaries of impossible. But when reporters asked Ethan how he did it, he gave a simple answer. I didn't know it was impossible. I just tried. Too often, adults build walls around what can and cannot be done. We call them rules, limits, or impossibilities. But children see the world differently. They see possibilities where others see dead ends. Ethan Miller reminded Harvard and the world that the greatest breakthroughs don't always come from age, titles, or degrees. They come from courage, curiosity, and a mind unafraid to try.